Today in the Women in Shared Mobility series, June edition 2019, we have Divya. Divya is from India and she runs or manages Bixi. And maybe Divya, you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing at Bixi.
Sure. Hi, my name is Divya, Divya Kalia Sharma. I basically am a master's in economics and I started my job in the world of analytics. I was working briefly with BCG before I quit my job and a couple of other organizations before I quit my job and decided that I wanted to do something else, a little more of an entrepreneurial journey of my own. I was joined with my husband in this journey. He is the co-founder with me, Mohit, and one of his friends also joined us in the journey. So basically, we are three co-founders to a startup in India, which is called Bixi, which is basically an intelligent mobility solution on a digital platform. What we started doing was that we realized in our day-to-day commute to back and forth from work, we realized that we were spending a lot of unproductive hours on the road because of the traffic congestions in Delhi, because of which we realized that we needed to sort of think about a more efficient way of mobility in the city, because we were facing this problem and a million other people were facing this problem along with us every single day. That is the reason that we started thinking on these lines, and we started with a bike taxi service, which is basically an on-demand two-wheeler taxi service, which is a motorized two-wheeler on a combustible engine that we started. With the service was started in 2016 January with 10 men and 5 women. We decided that we wanted to have a gender distinguished service to ensure safety for women in this particular mode of transport. This could be hailed on the ground, or this could be booked on an app just like an Uber, but it was only on 2 wheels rather than on 4 wheels. So this is Bixi is all about, and this is what.
Great, excellent. And we'll pick up on the question around safety again. I think that's a very interesting topic. But maybe before we dive into that, maybe we'll just look a little bit at the changes in the industry in the last maybe 12 months and what you've seen in your particular area, how the developments have moved, and what is the maybe most unexpected development for you in your area.
So I think the most unexpected development in recent times has been the shift from the usage of a 4-wheeler towards a 2-wheeler. Because increasingly a lot of developed and developing and many other economies in the world realized that there was a large movement towards urbanization. Somebody mentioned a statistic a while back saying that by 2030, a large part of the world population will be residing in urban cities. That essentially means the need for efficient mobility solutions will be much higher, because there will be a lot of traffic conditions on the road otherwise. So what really happened was that going back a couple of years, there was an influx of on-demand mobility solutions. Essentially, they came on 4-wheelers, like examples of Uber, Lyft, Ola, etc., etc. So now really what happened was that these 4-wheelers essentially became the part of the solution and the part of the problem in itself, because essentially while they were catering to a solution of on-demand, readily available mobility solution, at the same time, they started creating the problem of congestion in cities. The cities started realizing that there were far too many cars far too soon suddenly on the roads. And the public structure was not ready to handle this kind of a influx of cars, so soon. So what really happened was that people started looking for alternative means of transport, because getting stuck in a traffic congestion, whether you're in an Uber or whether you're in public transport, was not good for anybody, really. So started looking for alternative means of transport, and that's where 2-wheelers came in, because they were efficient. There was more, optimization of occupancy on the road, because the roads were being utilized more effectively. And that is the reason why 2-wheelers became really, really popular. And that is why we launched a 2-wheeler taxi service in India.
And we have on that note, I just want to go into one of the discussion points that we have here in North America right now is, the two-wheelers are becoming more popular on our side too, with the kick scooters or the electric kick scooters, electric mopeds. And one of the discussion is, should they use the same roads, or should they perhaps be, separated for safety reasons? And I don't know, it's a luxury to build specific roads for every type of vehicle, but is this something that you would think would be beneficial, if maybe a part of the road system in Delhi is dedicated to these two-wheelers? Would it be more safe, or do you think, no, actually it makes more sense to keep it as it is and not build more roads for vehicles maybe?
Actually, it's an interesting question, because recently there was this um, particular plan which was launched by the help of an initiative of the Indian Institute of Technology and Delhi government, which was called the BRT, which was basically a separate road system for buses compared to cars on the road, so dedicated lanes for buses. But I don't know, it has been claimed that it was a success in many other countries. It did not meet with success in India, at least. It was a huge failure. It was launched at least thrice in 3 different areas. It did not meet with success. It had to be taken down because congestion was only increasing, because of the dedicated lanes for buses. So and two-wheelers were not allowed in those lanes. So I feel that having dedicated lanes is not going to solve the problem. So let me be honest, when we started the service, there were few problem areas that we felt that could raise an issue with our service. First of all, the fact that two-wheelers is comparatively considered a less safe means of transport, in terms of the fact that it is not as stable, if the driver doesn't know how to drive safely. And that is the first problem that we were facing, that, are we going to face more accidents compared to a four? But in our experience, and it's been about 3.5, 4 years since we've been applying this service, we've not faced as many issues on ground, honestly. It's not become a problem for us, other than small incidents here and there, which are not serious, which could have happened to anybody on the road. In general, it is essentially a matter of educating the drivers to drive properly, to follow all the rules, and to stick to their side of the road, essentially, rather than creating a separate road for them. So essentially, if you really make sure that they follow the rules and they're doing their job properly and they're incentivized to follow the rules, essentially, we have never faced a challenge that way.
That is great. And I think this is maybe also where, North America or Europe is a little bit different, because people seem to be used to having, the right of, this is my lane and I can drive however I want. And they're not necessarily used to this fluid movement. And this is, I'm making an assumption now. I have no idea, but maybe that's part of the reason why your bus, pilot didn't quite work the way it should have. When in Europe and North America, they're really quite successful. All of a sudden the congestion for the bus decreases, not for the rest of the road. That is true for the bus itself, and the speed increases, which basically means more people take public transit, right? But as you say, it doesn't always work the same way. Things that don't work always the same way is one of the topics we're really interested at the moment is like women and safety. And we have a bit of a tendency in our industry to design or think about our typical user, quite frankly, as being male, young, professional. That's generally what we're designing for. So how do we ensure, and why did you decide from the start to have a specific, kind of a certain portion of your drivers are female and focus on this? Why did you do that, and why should we do this overall?
So actually, when we were designing this service, we were thinking from the perspective of the customer itself. So I was thinking from the shoes of the customer, would I be comfortable in X, Y, or Z format of the service? And I realized that, as a woman in India, safety is a huge issue. Whether public transport, whether it is last mile commute, whether it is four-wheelers, on demand, not on demand, everywhere. In general, safety is a huge issue. Unfortunately, in our country, I mean, time and again, India has been ranked the most unsafe place for women. Very unfortunate, but it is a fact. And I realized that, culturally also, women are not comfortable traveling with men in general. So what I realized was that women will not be comfortable sitting behind a man they do not know. Because essentially on a two-wheeler, you are closer to the driver, you're sitting very close to the driver, and there is a possibility that you might even touch him on the shoulder or somewhere when he sort of brakes or speeds up or something, happens, a change in the speed or a speed bump somewhere, so essentially I felt that women will not be comfortable in that environment, and I felt I would be comfortable. Why would I expect my female customers to be comfortable? And hence we decided to launch this service dedicatedly for women, by women. So we have dedicated fleet and drivers who are dedicated only for women customers. And a lot of women customers came back to me saying that they were very excited about this, that they were very happy that such a service was available. In fact, they started booking this for their kids as well, because they felt their young daughters perhaps were safer with traveling with a female pilot, female driver rather than a male driver, given the environment in Delhi. So
is there do you also have to shift essentially the perception of, I'm assuming, again, I'm making assumptions, that the predominantly it'll be male driver, whether it's for Ola, for Uber, for any other two-wheeler services? I would think predominantly it's male. Do you have to also educate essentially women to become drivers and shift the perception of, a woman can also be a driver? Is that a work that you also have to do, or how does that work?
Absolutely. It's such a correct assumption, absolutely spot on about it. So this is a predominantly male-dominated industry from ages on, and it is still the same. 99% of the drivers that you meet on the ground, in fact, more than 99%, is male drivers. There are extremely difficult to find female drivers on the ground. You don't find them in Ola, Uber, or any of those four-wheeler mobility services. Just a handful of service providers are offering them. In fact, as far as I know, we are the first and still the only in the country to provide a dedicated fleet of women drivers on two-wheelers. There are few people who are doing it on four-wheelers, but again, very scanty service, less than 0.0001% in the entire population. Just to give you a little bit of a perspective, we have about close to 100 girls, and there is a population of 9 million women in Delhi alone. So it's just nothing, it's like a drop in the ocean. Yeah. So that is the unfortunate case. But then 100, yes, that's much better than 5 that we started. And yes, we do have to educate a lot of women. So what we do is essentially we tie up with a lot of NGOs in and across Delhi, and we try and ask them to bring women onto a platform, into a room somewhere wherein our teams can go. In fact, I personally make sure that I go sometimes and visit these girls. We speak to these girls. These girls are either unemployed or underemployed or employed in the unorganized sector. So they are earning very meager salaries, if at all they're earning any, and it's all mostly in cash, which means that we need to ensure that when we educate them about this particular profession, we tell them that not only are we going to bring you into the organized economy, we are going to open a bank account for you, your salary is going to go into that, you are going to get much better remuneration structures, and you are going to feel much better about this job. And we've seen a huge change in the level of confidence from when they joined us till 6 months down the line. Feel more confident, they feel very happy, empowered that they're bringing up their kids, or they're supporting their education, or they're supporting their parents or their family in some manner, being financially independent, which they were not earlier. by this means, we've also decided to actually provide them the vehicle, because sometimes they can't afford it. So, with leasing partners so that we can provide them the vehicle. We make sure that we train them well. We ensure that we provide, we help them get the driver's license in place. So the entire ecosystem has to be brought up hand in hand so that they get empowered, they get employment, and at the same time, our female customers are feeling safe and they are happy that there is a service which is dedicated for them.
That is super interesting, and it's really empowering to hear that you not only solve the customer's problem, but you actually bring up a whole new kind of professional group. Essentially, it's a huge amount of work that you're doing. It's super inspiring. Thinking down the future and whether or not we will have autonomous vehicles in the future is one question, but let's just assume we will get some form of autonomous. Do you think we have to be, from a customer perspective now, not from the driver perspective, but from a customer perspective, do you think we have to be more concerned about, safety for women and maybe children, because you mentioned children as well, and I think that's a very important group that we also don't talk a lot about. Do we have to be more concerned? And if so, or if not, why? What changes? What do you think are the big changes that impact safety?
I think, the most important thing in this aspect is to know, whether the autonomous vehicle that we're talking about is individually driven or whether it's on a shared mobility platform. Because if it's on a shared mobility platform, we need to, sort of try and give more control to the passengers to understand who they will be traveling with. If the women are traveling, don't have any control over who they're traveling with. It could pose a problem if some kind of a perpetrator tries to derive a pattern out of it and tries to take advantage of that pattern. Understanding that the lady is traveling in an autonomous vehicle which doesn't have any other individual traveling in it, like a driver or a conductor or anybody else who's available for her safety. The same thing goes for kids. So essentially the support environment, which basically means either having a camera installed somewhere or more control to the lady to understand who she really travels with, is really important. If she can actually understand beforehand, before she does the travel, that maybe there is an autonomous shared mobility vehicle which is dedicated for women, for kids, maybe she'd feel safer in that. What I really feel is that honestly speaking, autonomous is a long way to go in India, and safety for women is also a long way to go in India. So the places where autonomous is being tested right now, safety is not that big a concern for women. Safety is a really big issue in India, where autonomous is right now not. I think the two worlds will need time to meet. They do, I think, dedicated vehicles for women or kids would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Just one last question that I'm really curious, because I've heard different things. So one approach is dedicating, vehicles and drivers to women, and then there's the additional add-on that sometimes they're called the bink drivers, or the vehicle looks different, essentially. And there's different debates. In some places, I think that works great, and in other places, it draws even more attention to the fact, there is only women. Do you have any thoughts on that? What you think would be best? Or what you
really
think works best, essentially?
So honestly, I'll tell you what. Let me just speak from my experience in Bixi Pink. So when we started this service, I told you there were some preconceived notions that we have with respect to the problems that we might face.
Yeah.
As I said, one of the problems could be with respect to the safety of the vehicle. The other problem that we faced was with respect to ensuring the safety of the driver himself, so that he doesn't or she doesn't get harassed by anybody on the road. Because essentially when you talk about a four-wheeler, it's an enclosed vehicle. you feel more safer in a tin box.
Mhm.
On a two-wheeler, you're essentially on an open mode of transport,
Mhm.
affect you, like the weather or people around you or any kind of environment. You're more prone to interact with your environment, and it could pose any kind of a threat to you. So essentially, the safety of our female fleet was more important to me than anything else, honestly, even for the safety of my customers, because if they didn't feel safe themselves, they will not continue with the service, and they will be not be not do it happily. So their safety came first, and I started by, the first thing I did was, the first thing that came to my mind was I gave them all pepper sprays. Trust me, didn't use them. Not one girl needed to use a pepper spray in the entire time that she was operating with us, because these women were working very professionally. They knew exactly what they wanted to do, exactly how they wanted to do it, which lanes they needed to go in, how they wanted to ferry customers, and they were also traveling with female customers. So it helped them feel more secure in their head, and
Mhm.
they never need. So essentially, it's a matter of identifying the right kind of product design, customizing it to the audience, ensuring that the people who are operating it are feeling comfortable doing so. Um, that is very important for the service. And I don't think that I've ever come across a single incident that has happened in Bixi Pink where a girl needed to use a pepper spray. It's never happened.
So great. I mean, that's excellent. That's really excellent to hear. As I said, there's different stories I'm hearing, and I'm really happy to hear that that has never been an issue. And I actually, um, I think you make a good point, and we keep forgetting that sometimes. With the big Uber and Lyft, they all know they have to take care of their drivers, but what you're doing is a completely different level of taking care of your drivers. You as you said, you provide them a livelihood, you make sure that they can support their own family, but you also make sure that they feel safe, which is very different from how other drivers are treated. So um, I'm very inspired by the work that you're doing. Is there anything else that you would like to tell our viewers this month around shared mobility, around the work you're doing in India, whatever it is? Is there anything else you would like to add or say to our viewers?
I think the most important thing is that, when at the time of the designing of the product, at the time of the conception of the service of the product, whichever it is, um, there are two things that needs to be taken into account. One is making sure that that service is, designed in a manner which is usable by all sort of cultural and gender groups, or any kind of other diverse minority groups, rather than just, as you said rightly, the bachelor who's young, who's just got a new job, he's a male. So designing products which are more sort of, I would say, connecting everybody together in that product offering, and offering it to everybody. That's one thing. The other thing is ensuring that that product offering is designed in a manner which has a long-term macroeconomic perspective, so that essentially in the long run, things that happen to Uber in India, which is basically the fact that they brought so many cars on the road, and I'm sure that this happened in many other cities, that suddenly congestion increased, and then congestion increased, and then surge pricing increased, and then surge pricing increased, and the public transport was rendered not as effective because people were moving from public transport to Uber, Olas. But so public transport needed to raise their prices. So it was like a vicious circle which was creating problems for everybody down the line.
Yeah.
And the person who was earlier traveling in public transport, say, for example, paying 30 rupees for his journey, now needed to pay either 55 rupees on the public transport, or a much higher surge priced fare in Uber, which he was taking. So it was really not, it was not a win-win for everybody. So
Yeah.
it was, so needed to think about what kind of service that they want to sort of bring to the platform in, with a long-term approach, maybe not just 1 year, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. They need to think about the kind of service that they bring to the economy and what it will do to them themselves also, not just for
Mhm.
advantages that will create for the entire city, but also Uber had a lot, or Ola, and all these people had a loss of revenue themselves, because they were cannibalizing their own revenues. There were too many cars on the road, nobody was getting enough rides, and people were looking for alternative means of transport, hence two-wheelers came in.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
wheelers became the new in thing, because it was four-wheelers rendered themselves ineffective. So
right.
a service really needs to be thought through in a long-term perspective, rather than just the short-term gains that these people probably thought about, which they did make, but
Yeah.
but long term it was not good for anybody.